welcome to the main event, Mark's Podcast. I'm your co-host. I'm a former radio news reporter, a wrestling fan for allegedly well over 20 years, wrestling memorabilia collector, and cat enthusiast, Troy Adams. And your second co-host is the walking, talking wrestling encyclopedia and figure hunter extraordinaire. He is the games master to my Dr. Death. Say hi to Greg. What's up, man?
Good Lord.
What?
The games master, really?
Well, I told you I always stay topical, and...
No, I know. I'm not saying you're off topic. It's just, wow.
Yeah, I forgot until I watched
Who the hell makes
show
a Kevin Sullivan reference?
Apparently me. I forgot, by the way, that he changed his name to the Games Master until I was watching the show, and I was like, oh my gosh, I remember.
Well, I mean, I would have preferred the Taskmaster. I mean, the Dungeon of Doom was, legendary.
Well, yeah, I mean, we talked about that last week. If any of you, or I'm sorry, 2 weeks ago, if any of you go in the archives, episode number 2 weeks ago, we talked about Great American Bash 1996. On the show, we talk about the Dungeon of Doom. We don't go into depth on it, but we kind of cover some members that would be joining, that did join. And it's kind of weird looking back at WCW 1996 to realize the Dungeon of Doom still had, well, I don't want to say still had steam in them, because that would not be accurate, but they were
on fire, dude.
They would still keep going for a while. They were on fire like a garbage can full of waste.
I am pushing TJ to do a Dungeon of Doom retrospective, by the way, everyone, so fingers crossed.
Maybe once we get a Patreon going eventually down the line, we can do that. And you and I were talking about doing a review on No Holds Barred at some point, so we could do that.
Yeah, I didn't realize that movie's on Hulu, so I have easy access to it. So cool.
Oh, well, because everybody wants easy access to that. By the way, what's that smell?
I can't sensing sarcasm in your voice.
Well, moving on to the subject at hand here. We're officially in July. It's July 1st, everybody. And we are officially 3 days away from our nation's birthday here in America. So it's we're getting to that time of year where the kids put the magical hat on America. It wakes up and says, "Happy birthday!"
All while staying 6 feet apart from one another.
Oh, well, of course. And wearing a mask outside. Outside, wear that mask. Yeah, no.
Come to California, you have to wear it everywhere.
Yeah. Well, we're officially diving into July, which means we teased it before. We're covering the epic trilogy of matches in the NWA from Ricky Steamboat and Ric Flair for the NWA World Title. This event kicks that off, and that's obviously the big story of the event. There are some other big matches here, some good things to talk about, some other not so great things. But you want to dive into all the news and notes from around this time, Greg?
Sure. I don't remember any of it off the top of my head, so I watched the event.
Well, how old were you at the time? Like 4?
What was this, 89?
Yeah. So
I probably have no memory of wrestling at this point.
Yeah.
I don't start remembering anything until late 89. Okay, maybe I did then. I
forget. Well, I forget some of the stuff that went down around this time period, like some major stuff and some stuff that was still limping along. For instance, this month, Carlos Colon went into PR overdrive during the Jose Gonzalez trial. Jose Gonzalez, by the way, was Invader, I want to say number 1. I think he was the one who allegedly stabbed Bruiser Brody to death in the shower in Puerto Rico. But Carlos has been spending much of his time in an effort of turning Gonzalez babyface on TV, to the point of where fans who were in attendance for a show one day after the trial actually cheered when the verdict was announced and Jose did not go to jail.
Justice.
Think about that, Greg. Just, if any of you want a more in-depth dive into all of that, go check out Dark Side of the Ring from season 1. Was that their first episode?
I don't know if it was their first, but honestly, man, that one's crazy to watch. I'm a huge advocate of that show, by the way.
Oh yeah, it's
an amazing show, but I will tell you, it's hard to watch at times. So, I mean,
yeah, definitely when
it's
you're
hard to
dealing
endorse,
with,
but hard to not say it's good.
Well, I think it brings awareness to some of the stuff that gets buried, which I think is great, because how many people would have got the true story of Bruiser Brody throughout the years if not for Dark Side of the Ring? I mean, I don't know. Yeah, and you can all form your own conclusions about Jose Gonzalez, Bruiser Brody, Abdullah the Butcher, and Carlos Colon, and others. But yeah, it was tough listening to Tony Atlas just talk about, all of this and carrying his friend bleeding to death to the hospital. It was rough. Something else that was a little weird around this time, Linda McMahon went to the New Jersey Senate this week and admitted that pro wrestling is fake to avoid regulations from the Athletic Commission. The key is that New Jersey has a 3% tax that goes to the commission, and the WWF is holding WrestleMania there in a little over a month, and that tax applies to not only the live gate, but to any money generated from TV revenues as well. A current affair.
And that's after Trump takes his cut.
Good Lord. A current affair made it into a big story, and interviewed Roddy Piper and everything. Piper's stance, Vince McMahon. Piper's stance.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I already see where this is going.
Well, they interviewed Piper, who, by the way, was not in the WWF in 1989, at least not yet.
He was on his way back at that WrestleMania.
Yes, but at this time he was not, and his stance is that Vince McMahon is a liar, wrestling is real. Oh, I don't know.
I thought I was going to get more graphic than that because, he's a wild guy.
I didn't get deep into the article. He probably, let me tell you something. But, I didn't,
No, that's Hulk Hogan.
Well, no, his would be, let me tell you something, brother. Which, by the way, I saw, we were speaking about No Holds Barred earlier. I saw a commercial for it that played during a WWF show in the, around this time. And he was in full Rip gear with the No Holds Barred logo behind him. And he said No Holds Barred in this promo about like 20 times. And thanked all the little Hulkamaniacs are going to watch it. And if they've already watched it, drag their parents down there, make them watch it again in theaters. And if they don't, he was going to drop the big leg on them. And I was like, child abuse. Woo!
My question is, who took them initially?
Yeah. I'm like, how did the little kids ride their bikes and now they need I don't know. It's weird. And if you've already seen it once in theaters, you're not going back. I'm just saying that now. Yeah, but
it's one of my guilty pleasures, so screw you.
I mean, it didn't suck. It just was.
I can say with all honesty, it did suck, but not in a way where I'm not watching this again.
No.
It's one of those things that's bad, but I don't know. There's something about it.
That's Mr. Nanny. All right.
Yeah, that was terrible to watch.
And Santa with muscles. But the point of this, I replied to that one and I said, child abuse. Woo. He was building up for that 96 heel turn. And, somebody said, dude, Hulk Hogan would leg drop his grandmother for a payday. I said, you're probably
He's on Triple H. He'd sledgehammer his mom for a title. Pretty sure JR said that about him.
Good Lord.
Why is that the thing, by the way? I want a world title, so I'm going to sledgehammer my mother.
Well, she gets in the way. I'm just throwing this out there, by the way. I'm getting some of these news and notes from the Wrestling Observer at the time. I threw out all the speculative and the opinions and crap. So most of this is just in retrospect, this stuff is fact. So just throwing that out there. We were originally told that WrestleMania 5 would be fighting on pay-per-view against WrestleWar 89, The Ultimate Gamble, both booked on the same day of April 2nd. There were 11 million pay-per-view homes, but only 2 million of them have the ability to offer both shows, and the other 9 million or so are mostly on Turner's side and will only carry WrestleWar. However, this was due to Vince McMahon demanding a higher cut of the pay-per-view pie. When Vince eventually dropped his demands, instead only asking for 40%, the pay-per-view and cable companies stabbed Turner in the back and said that they would carry WrestleMania instead. To save face, billionaire Ted moved the date of WrestleMania and said that they would hold a free Clash of the Champions event on that day instead on regular cable that would feature the Flair Steamboat 2 match from the trilogy, which we will cover in 2 weeks. Man, that's a mess. Like, have you ever heard of this?
I have, yeah.
That's nuts. And somebody made the reference that they were like, the pay-per-view companies did this all along. They were never going to carry WrestleWar. They wanted to carry Mania. They were doing this to back Vince down. And then at the end, they pulled their hood off. And it was like, it was me all along, Turner.
It was sports entertainment, never wrestling.
I mean, it was kind of dirty pool.
I mean, it's cutthroat, man. I mean,
you don't say.
At the end of the day, it's still a business, you know. I mean, no matter what side you choose, you know. So it's like,
yeah,
you have to look at it like that.
I would have a hard time feeling bad for Ted Turner here, by the way, considering
I wouldn't feel bad for either one of them. I'm sure they're both doing fine at the time. They just want to be doing more fine.
Well, it's not so much, you know, if they're doing good or doing bad, but just the fact that both of them had a history of stabbing people in the back, you know, to rise up the corporate ladder throughout the time, you know. So, like you said, it's business. It is what it is. By the way,
and Donald Trump's involved in this too, kind of, with WrestleMania being in Trump Tower or Trump Plaza.
Biggest WrestleMania ever, greatest show of all time. You know it, I know it, everybody knows it. The biggest crowd, WrestleMania history, huge.
Well, that was more spot on than ever. That was more spot on than you've ever had, actually.
Yeah. There you go. We do stupid, terrible impressions on the show sometimes, by the way. So just
don't take that as an endorsement or anything, please. Just don't read into it. People will read into crap. Don't.
Yep. We don't do politics on the show, people.
Don't do politics. We don't do religion.
Yeah.
Just don't be a Steelers fan, or we don't. No.
Vince's immediate retaliation to the announcement of this show, Chi-Town Rumble, by the way, was a loaded up Chicago show going just 2 days before Chi-Town Rumble. And then he signed J.J. Dillon away from the NWA, which, from everything I heard, I'm not sure that was a big get. But in the impending Chicago war between the NWA and WWF, Vince is winning handily by a score of 9,500 tickets sold for his house show, not even television, a house show, versus 1,200 tickets sold for Chi-Town Rumble.
Ouch.
Yeah. A house show versus
What was this show, by the way?
What, the house show or the...
Yeah.
I have no idea. I think Warrior and Savage were working the main event. I think. I can't... Don't quote me on that.
Oh, that would sell at that period.
Yeah. Vince McMahon allegedly called up Ted Turner after all of this, by the way, to make peace and offer a truce that they would agree not to raid each other or sabotage any more pay-per-views. That's a bold move, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
Wow.
Spoiler, it doesn't. Both of them continue to bicker and just throw, lob shots at each other until the day WCW shuts its doors. And even after it technically is over, they still kind of crap on the corpse. So, which, look, we can say all we want about Vince McMahon doing that, but if the roles were reversed, you don't think Eric Bischoff would be out there dancing on the dead corpse of WWF weekly?
Hell no.
Here's what I was talking about earlier with things limping along in 1989. Larry Zbyszko, who...
wow.
Dave
Sorry, that's a horrible segue.
Well, not him, but the company. By the way, Uncle Dave had,